Welcome to this video. In this video, I would like to explain you the most important topics about navigation in SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA. Enjoy this video and let's get started. To log into the SAP system, you need a program installed on your local computer, the so-called SAP logon. Here on the screen, we can see the shortcut for the SAP logon, and with double click, you open up the SAP logon, and there we see different connections I have prepared for this session. So here basically you see a folder favorites, shortcuts and connections, and in here I have created two folders to categorize and group my different connections. And basically with those buttons you can change your view. So for example, if you'd like to have it as a workspace view, you can click on this button, but you can also have it as a list view or as a tree view. And with this button you can display and hide the comment field. And here you have to check if a connection has been already set up or if you have to set it up manually. If there is no connection already, then you have to click on this button or right click and then add new entry and a connection. And then you end up in here. You can basically search for your specific system ID, but basically normally you just can click on next, and in here you can set up a custom application server, and in here basically you can type in a description. And those three information normally, so the application server, the instance number, and the system ID, will be provided by the SAP Basis department. So simply ask the SAP Basis department for those information, and there you can type them in, and then you can click on finish, and then basically this connection has been set up. And with double click, then a new window opens up, and in here you can type in a specific client. Normally it's pre-filled. A SAP user, this is mandatory. You need an SAP user to work with SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA system. A password will be provided also when your SAP user has been created, and your standard logon language. And in here, basically, you can type in your SAP username. So in my case, Andreas G, and your password. So I type in password, hit enter. And here you can basically see that either the SAP user has been already created or your password has been reset. Then you have to type in a new password. So in here, I simply type in a new password. You have to repeat your password again, and then you can just simply hit the enter key on your keyboard or click on this button, and then you have changed your password, and then you're logged into the SAP system. To work with the SAP system with SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA, you need a local computer where the SAP logon is installed, a keyboard, a mouse, and a hardware. And here you have a lot of key combination shortcuts to just work with the keyboard, not with the mouse, but I highly recommend also to work with a mouse because it's easier, and those are the needed hardware devices. Right here we are seeing the graphical user interface, the SAP GUI. And within the SAP GUI you have different areas that are really important in your daily work with the SAP system. So at the top in here you have the menu bar. There are really important menu functions available in your daily work. In the top right corner there you have different options for this window. Down the area menu there you have a toolbar that you can use for different functions. Here you have a title, over here you have an application toolbar, and in general here you have the so-called Dynpro. In the bottom left area there you have the status bar, and in the bottom right area there you have the system information. And in general, now I would like to go deeper into those areas in the SAP GUI and explain you the details in different parts. So as I've explained, in the top area there we see the menu bar, and in here you can execute one menu function via clicking on one of those menu buttons and then selecting one of those functions. So for example, if you would like to jump to a business workplace, then you can click on menu and then to business workplace, and then this transaction is being executed. I can go one step back. In this list, you will see in the left part a short description of this menu function, and on the right side a key combination that can be used also to execute this menu function. So for example, if I would like to call the business workplace, I can, as shown a couple of seconds ago, clicked on menu and then business workplace, or I could also use the key combination Control F12. So I'm doing this right now, hitting Control F12, and then as we are seeing right now, I moved over to the business workplace. And the menu bar is depending on the transaction that you're currently executed. So not all of those functions are in every transaction the same, but the two menu function system and help are always in every transaction there. So for example, if I would like to move to a different transaction to the data browser SE16N, then in here we're seeing different menu function. So I can jump one step back, but system and help are always there. Then below the menu bar, there we're seeing the toolbar. And one of the most important elements in the SAP GUI is the so-called command field. With the command field, you can execute shortcuts and transaction codes quite easily. And if this command field is not visible, maybe then, as we've seen right here, it is invisible, then you can click on this button, open command field, and then it is visible once again. If this command field is in general not visible, then you can open up the SAP GUI options and then activate the command field, so you can access the SAP GUI options with this button in the toolbar, customize local layout, or the key combination Alt and F12, and then choose options. Or you could also open up the SAP logon, click in the top left corner, and then also choose options. And then under interaction design and visualization 1, here on the OK code, there you see the checkbox show OK code field. So maybe if the command field is not shown in your case, then you can simply select this checkbox, show OK code field, hit apply and OK, and then after restarting and logging again into the SAP system, the command field is there. And as we've seen right now, you can also call the command field as the OK code field. So keep this in mind. And in the command field, there you can use different transaction codes, and there are more important functions available. And to show you this, I would like to move over to the data browser. Here in the first button in the toolbar, there we can see the enter function. So for example, this is exactly the same as if you would hit the enter key on your keyboard. Then, as described over here, is the command field. By the way, a quite important hint is using the key combination Control Shift 7 to directly set the focus into this input field. Then over here we see the button to close the command field. So you can click it, then the command field is invisible. You can click it once again, and then the command field is there. Over here, you can save your input. So depending on the transaction you are executing, so you can save your inputs in the selection field as a variant, or you can post your information, or you can simply save your information into the database. So this is normally for saving data. And then over here we have three very important functions in the SAP GUI and very important for your navigation. So the green button is for going one step back. As we've seen earlier, you could also hit the F3 key on your keyboard, and there you will jump one step back. So now I'm jumping back to the SAP Easy Access menu. And the second button is the exit button. There you can exit in total a transaction. You could also use the key combination Shift and F3. So if I click on exit, then again I jump back to the SAP Easy Access menu. And here is the cancel button. In most transactions, the cancel button has the same effect as the exit button, but depending on the transaction you're using, it could be quite different. You just exit the current process, and within this cancel, you're canceling the whole transaction. So keep this in mind, that those two buttons can be different depending on your transaction. And with this button here, it is grayed out, because I can't use this button, but this button is normally for printing purposes. So you can print your list and you can click on this button. In general, as we've seen right here, if a button in the toolbar is grayed out, then you can't click it, you can't use the key combination to execute this function. So going one step back to the SAP Easy Access menu, those three buttons in this case are grayed out. I can't use them in this transaction. So here you can find a specific search term in your transaction. You could also use the key combination Control and F. And once you've hit a field name in here in this case, or a search term, then with the next button, with the find next or the key combination Control G, then you can find the next hit based on your search term. With these four buttons, you can scroll in a list or you can jump to a new page. So with this button, you can jump to the first page, or in a list, you can jump to the top in the list. And with this button, you can jump one page back to a previous page. And with this button, you can go to the next page. And with this button, you can go to the last page. Those are really important functions, because with this button you can open up a new GUI window, you can generate a shortcut. Once you've clicked on this, then you have the ability to create SAP GUI shortcuts. And with this button you can access the F1 help, or you could also hit the F1 key on your keyboard. So for example, if I set the focus into the command field and then click on this button, then the performance assistant will open up, and in here we will get a nice description of this input field and nice hints for the command field. And over here you can customize your local layout, or you could also hit the key combination Alt and F12, and here you have a lot of functionalities and functions available. So you could also access the SAP GUI options, you can access the SAP GUI scripting, and so on. The two toolbar functions help and customize local layout are available in every SAP GUI window. Then we're seeing right here, we see the title of this application. So depending on the transaction you're executing, this title is slightly different. So here we're seeing the general table display, but if I would jump one step back, then here we're seeing the title SAP Easy Access. Then down to or below the title, we're seeing the application toolbar. And the application toolbar is depending and is different based on your transaction you're executed, because here the most important functions of the menu bar are available in this application toolbar. So in most cases, you have one execute or F8 button to execute your inputs. And here you have other functionalities in use. And if you hover over one of those buttons, either in the toolbar or in the application toolbar, there you can see that you also get a nice tooltip of the short description, and on the right side the key combination. So you can click on one of those functions, or you could also use the key combination as shown in here. And In general, here we're seeing an area, and this is the so-called Dynpro. And normally you can also call it like screens. And the Dynpro stands for a dynamic program. And in the Dynpro, as we're seeing right here, there are the most important input fields and graphical elements you're using in your daily work with SAP system. So here we're seeing some input fields. You can also see some lists. You can also see some buttons and so on. So in most cases, you are working in the Dynpro to enter your specific data. And here in the bottom there, we're seeing in the left area the status bar. So in here you have basically three different status messages. You can have a green message for a success message, you can have a yellow message for a warning, or a red message for an error. And so, for example, if I am doing this, then here you're seeing a green status message that the debugging is switched on. So this is a success, that your action has been succeeded. And if I'm moving to a different transaction, the FBL1N, and in here you're seeing a warning. So it's a yellow message. And for example, if I would move to another transaction and then use this one, then we're seeing a red status message. So in this one, we have to enter a valid date. And if you click on those message, then you will get a description. In this case, it's quite short, but in some cases, it has a nice explanation and some details about this success message, about this warning, about this error message, and you can get details about this. And in the bottom right area, there we can see the system information. So starting from right to left, here we're seeing if your secure network communication is enabled or not. Over here, we're seeing that the local tab order is not defined on the screen. And here we're seeing if SAP GUI scripting is supported and if a script is currently running. And in here we can see the SAP server alias, and in here, this is, in my opinion, the most important area. We can see different system information. So for now, we are seeing the executed transaction code, and if I click on this dark triangle, then you can see more information. So basically the SAP system, the client, the user, the program, and as mentioned, the transaction code. And if you click on one of those information, then in the future, this information will be shown in the footer in the system information. So for example, if I'd like to show the program, then I can click on program, and then the program is shown in here. And if I click on this white triangle, then I can close the system information. If I would click once again on this triangle, then I can open the system information again. Within the SAP system, within SAP GUI, you can use multiple sessions, multiple modes. And one way is to open new windows is to click on this button in the toolbar, new GUI window, and then a new window will open up. If you click on this button once again, then a new window will open up. You can also use the key combination Control N to open up a new window, or Control Plus. Or what you also can do is in the command field, you can use the shortcut /O and then click on create to create a new window. And here we have opened up a bunch of different modes. I would like to close a couple of them. And depending on your system setting, this is restricted. So in here we open up a transaction in RSet11 in the command field, and here we would like to have a deeper look into a profile parameter. Into this one, it's the rdis/max_alt_modes, and then we click on display, and here we see that in my SAP system this parameter is set to 16, and by default this should be set to 6. And if this profile parameter is not set in your default profile in the transaction code R set 10, then by default the maximum number of ABAP sessions per user session is set up to 6. And here you get a nice overview of the maximum number of sessions. And if I, for example, would click a couple of seconds to this button to open new GUI window, then you will see what happens if I reach the maximum number of windows. Then this information will appear that the maximum number of GUI sessions reached, and now I can't open a new window. And this is really useful, especially, for example, if you would like to open on one side a transaction, so for example the data browser, to have a deeper look into one information, and in another screen you would like to work on a transaction, so for example the Miro. Then you can do this quite easily. You can move those windows around on your screen, put it to a new monitor or stuff like that, and then you can move to one window to another window really easily and really fast. So first of all, once you have logged in, then you will probably see a similar window like this. You will see the SAP Easy Access menu, and this is the default area menu, the start menu that you will start working with the SAP system, with SAP ERP and SAP S4HANA. And here we're seeing a nice tree structure of different folders, categories, and at least transaction codes. And as seen, if you click on the dark triangle or double click on one folder, then the nodes in this folder will open up in a tree structure, in a list. And with double click on one of those nodes, then the transaction will be executed and you will jump to this transaction. And if you're not seeing this transaction code in front of the description, then under extras and settings, or the key combination Shift and F9, you can activate the setting display technical names. So if I would remove the setting and then click on continue, that, as you're seeing right now, the transaction code has been removed from this node and I'm just seeing the description, but I recommend to set this up. So once again, under setting, I can activate this. And now once again, you're seeing the transaction code. And if you would like to get a deeper look into the area menus, because in the start menu you can open up different area menus. So for example W, E, D, I, and then you're jumping to another area menu. But if you would like to jump to the SAP menu, to your entered SAP menu, you can click on this and then you're jumping one step back. If you want to, in the transaction code SU3, and then in the top default, there you can set up the start menu. So by default, it's the S000. It's the SAP Easy Access menu, the start menu. But if you want to, you can use the for help, search for other area menus, set them up. Or if you would like to enter the user profile under system, and then user profile, and then user data, you can also reach your user profile. Upper the area menu, SAP menu, there we see a folder called favorites. And favorites are really important in your daily work with the SAP system, because with favorites you can also execute transactions quite easily, because with right click on this folder, there you can execute different actions. So for example, you can open the folder, you can insert a folder for structure purposes, you can insert a transaction manually, and you can add other objects. So for example, if you click on this insert transaction option, there you can enter a transaction code. So for example, the Miro, the SE16N, or whatever, and with the enter key on your keyboard or with this button, you can take this over, and then this favorite has been added to this favorite folders. If you want to, you can add other transactions, and keep in mind that, for example, if you would like to add a transaction code in a specific namespace, so for example in the UI2 namespace, so for example this transaction is for starting the SAP Fiori launchpad, then you don't have to use the prefix /n in this case. So normally if you would like to enter this transaction code in the command field, then you would have to type in the prefix /n upfront, because otherwise the SAP system tries to use the slash and the first letter of this transaction code. But in this case you don't have to do this. You can simply type this in and then continue, and then you have set this up. And as mentioned, you can also add other objects. If you want to, you can add an URL, so you can double click on this one, and in here you can just simply type in a small text, so for example ERP up, and in here I can simply refer to my German speaking SAP blog, ERP up. And then over here we have set up an URL. Or if you want to, you can also directly create a favorite out of the area menu. So for example, here you have to set the focus onto one specific node, and then you can click on this add to favorites button, or use the key combination Control Shift and F6, and then you have also added this node to your favorites folder. And in the menu bar under favorites, there you have a lot more functions. So for example, there, as mentioned, you can add, you can change a favorite, you can move it, you can delete it, and so on. And what I like to, you can download your favorites menu to your local PC, and for example, you can send it to a colleague, and the colleague can upload your favorite menu from his or her PC. So this is how you can share favorites menus with other colleagues. What I also recommend is adding favorites directly out of a transaction. So for example, if I open the data browser in a new window, and then in the command field there you can use a shortcut, it's %_GCADDF, then hit enter, and now we're directly not seeing anything. But if I would open this area menu once again, then here we're seeing that this transaction has been added directly out of a transaction. So here you don't have to add it manually. This is really useful about favorites. So within the toolbar here you see the command field, and in my opinion this is the most important input field in the whole SAP system, in SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA, because here you can type in transaction codes. Because for sure you can set up favorites, you can double click on one favorite, you can look after different transactions in the area menu, in the SAP Easy Access menu, and then double click on this node to execute transaction. But I recommend to use transaction codes. In the bottom right area there you see the system information. You can set up showing the transaction code, and then you can learn over the time your most important transaction codes. And for example, if you would like to move to a new transaction, then you can just simply type in the transaction code. So for example, if I would like to move to the data browser, then I can type in SE16, hit enter, then I'm moving to the data browser. I can move back with the green button, with the back button. Or if you would like to move within a transaction to a new transaction, then you can use a prefix. It's the slash. And in the start menu, in the SAP Easy Access menu, there you don't need the prefix /n or /o. /o is for starting the transaction in a new window. But within here, I would not need it. But here you can also use /n to move to the data browser. And within here, you can move, for example, to this transaction and the other way around. And if you set the focus into the command field with your mouse, or also with the key combination Control Shift 7, and then you can hit the F1 key on your keyboard, then you will get a nice description of all the shortcuts about the command field, about transaction codes. So for example, as shown, you can use /n, you can use ** to skip the initial screen, you can use /o, you can use /i for deleting the current session, you can use /nex to log off really fast, you can use /nend also for logging off of the system and being asked. And with this button in the command field, there you see the history. So there you see you previously enter transaction codes within the command field. You can hover and you can move over one of those. You can click on one of those, then this transaction code has been taken over into the command field, and then you can hit enter to execute this transaction. Here we are in the transaction ME23N to display purchase orders. And in this case, I would like to explain you the so-called forward navigation. And in here, for example, if you would like to get some details about one supplier, then for sure you can open up in a new transaction, in a new window, the transaction code BP for maintaining the business partner, then typing in the ID of the supplier, searching for information, and then going back to the ME23N. As you might know, this is quite time consuming, it's complicated. You can use the forward navigation. So within here, you can just simply double click on the supplier input field, and then you're moving over to the transaction BP. Normally you would use the MK03 transaction, but in SAP S4HANA, it's obsolete and it's replaced by the transaction BP. Here you can get some detailed information, what you want to, and then with this back button, you will directly move back into your previously entered transaction where you initially called the forward navigation. And honestly, we don't see any characteristics that the forward navigation is supported, no icon, nothing like this. But just try it out. Just double click on different input fields, get to know where a forward navigation is supported, and then over the time you will get to know of all of the input fields, of all of the elements that support the forward navigation, and there you are really fast over the time. First of all, if you've logged into the SAP system, you might see the SAP Easy Access menu. And if you want to, you can set up a start transaction. Under extras, you can use the menu function set start transaction or the key combination Shift and F7. Once you've clicked here, you can enter a transaction code. So for example, if you like to mirror that, hit enter, then you see that this transaction code has been set up as a start transaction. And the next time you're logging into the SAP system, directly this start transaction will be started, and then you can start working directly. You don't have to type in the transaction code in the command field, open up a favorite or search it in the area menu, double click on this, you directly can start working. If you want to change the start transaction, then again under extras, set start transaction, you can change it. So for example, to the data browser SE16N, hit enter, then you have changed it. If you don't like the start transaction, if you just want to reset it, then once again under extras, set start transaction, you can just simply erase it, hit continue, and then you will have reset the start transaction. And for sure, if you have set up a start transaction, so for example the data browser, and you would like to move from your start transaction to another transaction, you can still use the prefix /n to move to another transaction. Within the SAP GUI, you can use the F1 help. And if you're not familiar with one specific element in the SAP GUI, you can set the focus on one of those elements and then hit the F1 key on your keyboard. And then here, in most cases, you will get a nice description about this field. You have also the ability to click on one of those proposed links. So for example, if you would like to know more about goods received, then you can click on this, and then you will know what goods received are in general in SAP ERP. You can go one step back, you can open up the product assistant, you can open up the SAP help portal, you can print this documentation if you want to. In some cases you can directly jump to the customizing, where this field is customized in the S Pro, in the reference guide. And you can also show the technical information. So for this case here, you can see what the field name is, what kind of data element is in use, and via the forward navigation with double click, you can move over, in this case, to the ABAP dictionary and get some nice detail information. Here we are right now in the transaction code MM03 to display materials. And within here we have one input field for the material number. And here we can use the so-called F4 help. It is called F4 help because you can execute this help via the F4 key on your keyboard. So you can just simply set the focus into this input field and then hit the F4 key on your keyboard. And then this window will open up where you can search for different materials, in this case for different informations in the SAP system. If you want to, you can search in different tabs based on other selection criteria for this material. And here, in this case, you can enter a material description, you can specify the language key, directly the material ID, and you can limit your search up to the maximum number of hits, in this case 500. And then, for example, if you hit a search term, so for example, starting with high, you can also use some wildcard characters. For example, the asterisk stands for multiple characters. So for example, now I'm searching for all of the materials starting with high. And you can use the plus sign. The plus sign stands for one universal character. So for example, now we're searching for a material that has a description starting with high and then any character. And now I would like to search for all the materials starting with high, and then you can start the search by clicking on this button, and then you can take over the proposed result with double click. And now here we're seeing the material ID. What you also can do is you can directly use the equal sign and then type in your search term, and here you will get a nice just-in-time proposal of this information. And if you have just one information, then with the enter key, then directly the ID of this value will be taken over. Keep in mind that this trick only works for the first selection criteria. So in this case, we've set up the search for the tab material number, material description. So if you're using the equal sign, then you will search directly a wildcard search for the material description. If I set the focus to this one, then we would search for the old material number in this case. And what is also really nice, I would like to show you. So for example, if I type in test, and then you will get also still the proposed solution, then you can take this over. But if you're not taking this over, then here we're seeing that the system directly uses a wildcard search. So you don't have to put an asterisk at the end of the search term. It will automatically be added. And you can see that a for help is available with this loop icon right next to this input field, because you could also execute and start the for help by clicking on this button. It has the exact same effect. Instead of double clicking on the SAP logon and double clicking on your connection, enter your SAP user ID, your password, maybe changing the client, you can use a so-called SAP GUI shortcut for logging quite smoothly into the SAP system. And to set up a SAP GUI shortcut, you have to be logged into your SAP system. And here in the toolbar, you can click on this button, Generate Shortcut. And once you've clicked on this, there you can set up a title. So for example, SAP Easy Access, you can select between 3 different types. So to call a transaction, to call a system command, and to call a report. And in our case, I would like to call a transaction, and because I have clicked on this button out of the SAP Easy Access menu, the transaction code for the SAP Easy Access menu has been directly pre-filled. If you want to, you can also use the SAP GUI shortcut for starting another transaction. So for example, if you want to, for the Miro, for another transaction, what you like to keep in mind that again, you don't have to add the prefix /n up front. You can directly type this transaction in here. In our case, I just would like to type in the session manager. Over here, you can, under system description, you can select for your specific connection in the SAP logon, and over here you will see the pre-filled information for using the SAP GUI shortcut. Unfortunately, you can't change the client afterwards, so if you would like to set up multiple SAP GUI shortcuts for SAP clients, you can also do this. This SAP user is just pre-filled. You can change it afterwards. I would like to show you in a couple of seconds. And language is default language that you're using to start, in this case, this transaction and maybe to log in. And again, this can't be changed as well. And under location, you specify the location where this SAP GUI shortcut should be saved on your local computer. Once you've clicked on finish, your SAP GUI shortcut is created, in this case on the desktop, and is ready for being used. And now to show you this, I would like to log off, because if I would not log off from the SAP system, then directly the transaction code is being executed, in this case the SAP Easy Access menu, and because I'm still logged in, I won't log in again, so I will log off. And in here you can see the created SAP GUI shortcut, so I will double click on this one. And then maybe a SAP GUI security pop-up will occur, because now the local computer is trying to access the SAP GUI, the SAP system. And you can just simply select the checkbox, remember my decision, and click on allow. Then this pop-up will occur. As mentioned here, you can change your SAP user, and in here you can just simply type in your password, hit enter key, or click on this log on button, and then we are logged in the SAP system, and there you can start working. How you can log off from the SAP system. So one ability is, if you have just one SAP GUI window open, to click on this log off button, or you can also use the key combination Shift and F3. Once you've clicked on this button, there a new pop-up will always occur and tell you that unsafe data will be lost. Do you want to log off? There you have to confirm this, and then you're logged off from the SAP system. If you, for example, have multiple windows open, then you can't just click on this log off, because then just the window is closed. So if you have multiple windows open, then you have to click on every window on this button. What you also can use to, instead of clicking on this button, you can use the shortcut /I, and then you will have the same effect if you would like to log off from the SAP system. What I recommend to use are two shortcuts. So the first one is /NEND in the command field. And once you've hit the enter key, then again, you will get this message. But if you have multiple modes, multiple windows open, then after clicking on or confirming on the yes button, then all of your modes, all of your windows are closed, and you are logged off from the SAP system. And you can also use the shortcut /NEX in the command field, and there you will be logged off from the SAP system. All of your modes, your windows, will be closed without being asked. So in this case, if I hit the enter key, then as seen, I'm logged off from the SAP system without being asked. And besides the SAP GUI, you can also work with the SAP system with the new user experience with the SAP Fiori. So normally you have to use your browser, so for example Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox and so on to work with the SAP Fiori, and therefore you need the specific URL to access the SAP Fiori Launchpad and to work with different apps structured in different tiles. So out of the SAP GUI, you can open up the SAP Fiori Launchpad with the transaction code /UI2/FLP. And then you will get this SAP GUI security pop-up because now the SAP GUI is trying to access your local computer, and therefore you can select the checkbox remember my decision and click on the allow button. And here we're right now seeing a window appearing because for me SSO single sign-on is not activated, and therefore you can enter your SAP username, so for example Andreas G, my password, and then if you want to you can select a language, the client, and then you can click on log on to log into the SAP Fiori Launchpad. And in here we are seeing different apps, different tiles structured in different groups. You can click around, you can open up an app by clicking on an app, and in the top right area there you can click on your profile to reach the me area. Here you can make user specific settings, you can edit your homepage if you want to, and in here you can open up the enterprise search. You can search in different apps and other areas what you like to. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video and get a nice overview of different options for navigation in SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA. Hit the like button, add a comment, subscribe for free, and then see you in the next video.